Well, hello and welcome back everyone to the next installment in our Reviewed and Ranked series. This is a series we've been doing for a little bit now where we are breaking down the movesets of every single character within the Ultimate Alliance 3 cast, starting with the base roster, and we've made our way into, well, the one and only E in the category, and that is none other than the bounty hunter Elsa Bloodstone. And she is a very unique character within her own right, so we're going to take an in-depth look and break down what she brings to the table and whether or not she is worth using, or to what extent she's worth using on any of your teams. But before we jump into the meat and bones of today's episode, make sure you check to see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, go ahead and fix that as we're rapidly approaching 500 subscribers. And make sure to leave a like on today's video if you find it helpful and or enjoyable. So let's have a look first off at the different team building synergies that Elsa Bloodstone brings to the table. She has 7 different synergies, which is actually a very respectable amount of synergies at her disposal. She has 3 in the mastery category, those being Femme Fatales, Midnight Suns, and Sharpshooters. She also has 2 energy type synergies with Women of Marvel and Wisecracking Warriors, as well as the strength synergy in Anti-Heroes and a vitality synergy with Ultimate Alliance 3. And that is an interesting item to have to just kind of pad out her kit with an excessive amount of synergies, as well, we'll get into her actual attacks and abilities right now. And I think it'll come to light as to why she has so many synergies in contrast to a lot of the attacks that she has at her disposal. So first off, we need to look at her basic attack, which is a 4-part section of attacks. The first 3 parts of this basic combo involve a flurry of blasts from her twin pistols. You have 1, 2, 3 alternating back and forth between the hands, and she finishes off that combo with a double barrel blast from her twin shotguns. Now, the important thing to remember with this basic attack for Elsa Bloodstone is, well, those first 3 hits don't deal any amount of hit stun or knockback to your enemies, though that 3rd blast will provide that knockdown and get some of that distancing. Because of that, Elsa is not the greatest character to have in a hand-to-hand fisticuff fight, because she doesn't have any get-off-me tools, and she's just going to get bumped around in terms of what she has with her standard kit. Her heavy attack, on the other hand, is unique in its own right, as it is the first 2-part heavy attack that we have analyzed thus far. It involves dual blasts from those shotguns, one after the other, though to fully execute the heavy attack and get both of those hits, you do need to hit the heavy attack button twice, otherwise you will just get the singular blast. Elsa does possess a double jump with a mid-air somersault for some increased mobility, and as I've mentioned in the past, these type of mobility jumps tend to work rather well when it comes to traversing some of the obstacles, such as laser grids and other floor hazards that you will come across when playing through the campaign. For Elsa's falling aerial attack, she will plunge downward and smash into the ground with the stock end of one of her shotguns. And I would advise that no one that owns or appreciates their firearms treat them in such a way as you are bound to not only cause irreparable damage to your weapon, but also run the risk of negatively affecting the sighting of said weapon. But Elsa doesn't seem to care about that, so she recklessly plunges that into the ground as she falls back down to earth. And finally, her block and dodge animation involves a 2-armed cross with her dual weld pistols being held out in front, and she will then somersault in the direction of input. Now, one caution with this is if you are late on executing that roll, you will have to wait for her to finish her blocking animation before the roll will actually take place, but that is kind of standard within the blocks, and it's not the longest blocking animation, so you will execute it faster than some other characters in the game. We can now move on and talk about the different abilities that Elsa Bloodstone possesses. First off, she has the fully stocked ability, which again, she engages in weapon mistreatment and misconduct as she swings her rifle around herself, launching enemies before, and she finishes off with a volley of shots from her twin pistols, rising up into the air to do so. This attack has the melee attack attribute applied to it, as well as the bash synergy trait, and is a decent damage dealer in terms of what she has available in her kit, with a decent EP consumption at that C classification and a not so great use on the stagger damage with that D classification there. As the attack is leveled up, it will have a reduced energy point cost, an increase to its overall attack damage, an increase to the damage done to the stagger gauge, and finally, a reduced chance of the attack being interrupted. Up next, we have the Shotgun Blast ability, which is a charge shot which you can aim as the attack is winding up, and finally release a single directional blast at the end of that charge. Though when used in a synergy format, she will unleash that blast in the direction that she is facing instantaneously. This has the projectile attack type as well as the bash synergy trait, which does make sense as it is one higher impact round as opposed to a volley of shots. This is a lower damage option compared to the fully stocked ability, but does have the benefit of having some ranged capabilities to it. With that B damage classification, maintains the same C energy point consumption, and finally has that same abysmal rating to the stagger damage with the D classification. As the attack is ranked up, it will have a reduced energy point cost, an increase to its overall attack damage, an increase to the damage done to the stagger gauge, and finally a reduced chance of being interrupted. Elsa's third ability is the double barrel, where she whips out those two shotguns and alternates in rapid fire shots back and forth between each weapon, and can be not only directionally influenced, but also can be rinsed and repeated as long as you continue to press that attack button. That works both in the standard usage as well as the synergy type trait. The attack type is of the projectile sort yet again, and possesses the synergy trait of rapid fire, which is more fitting as it is a barrage of shots, though it is a lot more latent when compared to other rapid fire abilities that we have observed so far. This is one of her worst abilities, having only a C classification in damage, maintaining that C classification in energy point consumption, and an abysmal E rating in terms of damage that it can output to stagger gauges. This is not a highly advisable attack to execute unless you are in a dire pinch. As this attack is ranked up, it maintains the same characteristics as her previous abilities, having the reduced energy point cost, increase to the attack damage, increase to stagger gauge, and finally having a reduced chance of being interrupted. Finally, we have the final ability, which is Bullet Bombardment, and this attack, again, is not great, all things considered. It involves firing from both weapons wildly while spinning in a forward motion, and because of the spinning dash that is accompanied with this, it not only has the projectile attribute to it, but it also possesses the melee attack attribute, and again with the rapid fire synergy trait. This, similar to the double barrel, has that not so great C damage classification, the C energy point consumption rating, and the equally abysmal E to the stagger damage dealt. As the attack is ranked up, it will have a reduced energy point cost, deal increased attack damage, as well as increased damage to the stagger gauge, and finally a reduced chance of being interrupted. And finally, we have Elsa's very underwhelming extreme attack. This involves a spinning motion of shots similar to what was executed with the bullet bombardment before finalizing with 2 higher impact shotgun blasts delivered from an aerial position out in front of the character a short ways away. This is a very difficult attack to land with those higher impact shots finalizing in the area that you want them to. Elsa does wander around and will kind of aimlessly deal that damage, especially in large groups of opponents. And overall, it's not super flashy. It's a little bit lengthier in taking just over 6 seconds to fully execute before she becomes actionable again. And that final hitbox, you're going to be really lucky if you end up finalizing those 2 hits on the intended target, such as the mini-boss character that you're looking to detonate it on. So having looked at and considered everything that Elsa Bloodstone has available to her, it is finally time for us to place her in the character tier list. And you might have an idea based off of how I've discussed some of her abilities and overall performance as to where she's headed. She is in no means a good character when compared to the rest of the cast. And the main aspect of that doubles back to her overall lackluster damage and inability to escape from fights. She's most effective at a medium range where she's not relying on characters to have to be staggered out or waiting on other members of the team to take them down. So someone had to be the first, and it just so happens to be Elsa Bloodstone, who will be relegated to the F tier of the character roster. If she hit a little bit harder, had some better ability attacks, and more importantly, just an overall damage buff, she probably could make her way up into middle D tier, possibly C tier, very, very end of C tier. But as she currently stands, she just doesn't pack enough of a punch or bring the firepower to the fight that you're needed. Only the options that she brings to the team that are worth any merit are the ability to double up on some of her team building synergies, all things considered. But what do you think? Do you agree with my placement of Elsa down here in the F tier? Do you think either there's something that I missed or should reconsider? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And be sure to check back tomorrow for another wonderful video, and next week for the new installment in the Reviewed and Ranked series. But thanks again for watching, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.